On a day of unprecedented protests, violence in the streets, spiraling chaos and utter political turmoil, Bangladesh today saw its Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina being ousted from office and fleeing the country under the most dramatic and unexpected circumstances. The abrupt end to Hasina's 15 years of uninterrupted reign came after over 300 people had died in violent protests and clashes with the police across Bangladesh in recent days. With her unpopularity at an all-time high and protests against her regime snowballing by the minute, the army gave the Bangladesh Prime Minister a 45-minute ultimatum to step down. Minutes after resigning, Sheikh Hasina left her official residence in Dhaka under a cloak of secrecy in a military aircraft and arrived in India's capital, Delhi, this evening. While there is no confirmation, so far reports say Hasina will head to London from Delhi and has sought asylum in the United Kingdom. Her sister Rihanna, who is accompanying her, is a UK citizen. Reports also suggested that Hasina wanted to address the nation before leaving, but the threat perception amid the massive public anger was so high, her security detail told her there was no time and that she would have to leave immediately for the sake of her safety. Later, in a televised address to the nation, Army General Chief Wakar Uzzaman said the military would form an interim government. Adding that there was no need to impose an emergency, he urged the protesters to end the violence and stand down. He stated, "There is a crisis. I have met opposition leaders and we have decided to form an interim government to run this country. I take all responsibility and promise to protect your life and property. Your demands will be fulfilled. Please stop the violence." Even as consultations and speculation continue, some reports suggest that Dr. Muhammad Yunus, renowned economist and Nobel laureate, could head Bangladesh's interim government. No sooner had Sheikh Hasina left Dhaka, unbelievable scenes erupted as thousands of protesters stormed the Prime Minister's palace. In videos that have gone viral on the social media, hordes of protesters can be seen vandalizing the Prime Minister's residence and looting and making off with whatever they could get their hands on. Some protesters were seen jumping around on Hasina's bed, some splashing about in the compound pool, while many others helped themselves to the food they found in the kitchen. The shocking scenes were reminiscent of the Taliban's takeover of Kabul in 2021 and the ouster of Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in 2022. Jubilant crowds waved flags on the streets of Dhaka and then, shockingly, smashed a statue of Sheikh Hasina's father and former Bangladesh president, known as the country's founding father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The visuals marked a massive shift in the country's political landscape. The legacy of Mujibur Rahman, fondly known as Bonga Bandhu, is no longer a symbol of Bangladesh's war of liberation. Instead, it seems to represent his daughter's politics, which protesters claim has focused on suppressing dissent. There were multiple reports of the houses of public representatives, Awami League offices, police stations, and other government installations being attacked, vandalized, and torched. Residences and offices of ruling party ministers, state ministers, parliamentarians, and Awami League leaders were vandalized at many locations. How did Bangladesh get to this point? Over 300 people, as we mentioned, had been killed since enormous protests convulsed the country in early July. Rallies that began last month against civil service job quotas escalated into some of the worst unrest of Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule and soon shifted into wider calls for the 76-year-old Prime Minister to step down. The controversial quota scheme reserved 30% of government jobs for family members of veterans from Bangladesh's 1971 war against Pakistan. The protests kept growing despite the scheme having been scaled back by Bangladesh's top court. Protesters argued the system was discriminatory and favoured supporters of Prime Minister Hasina's Awami League party. They advocated for a merit-based system to replace the quota. Hasina had defied weeks of demands for her to stand down, but things came to a head on Sunday when almost 100 protesters were killed in a single day. The violence marked one of the deadliest days in Bangladesh's recent history of civil unrest. The anti-government movement had attracted people from across society in the South Asian nation of 170 million people, including film stars, musicians and singers. Sheikh Hasina had ruled Bangladesh since 2009 and won her fourth consecutive election in January this year after a vote without any genuine opposition. There were allegations of widespread election fraud and rigging. The elections were boycotted by the main opposition party, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, as Hasina was accused of entrenching power through state institutions and suppressing dissent in the country. Many accused her of ruling with an iron fist, launching brutal crackdowns on dissent, holding a farcical election, and acting like a dictator. Sheikh Hasina once helped rescue Bangladesh from military rule, but her time in power saw the mass arrests of her political opponents and human rights sanctions against her security forces. While the daughter of a famous revolutionary who led Bangladesh to independence, Hasina presided over breakneck economic growth in a country once written off by US statesman Henry Kissinger as an irredeemable basket case. Critics accused Hasina's government of a litany of rights abuses, including the murder of opposition activists. Hasina's principal opponent, Begum Khaleda Zia, has been languishing in jail after she was sentenced to a 17-year prison term in 2018, with top leaders from her party also behind bars. Hasina received praise not only for her handling of the economy but also for a decisive crackdown on Islamist militants in the Muslim-majority nation. But her government's intolerance towards dissent gave rise to resentment at home and expressions of concern abroad, especially in the United States. Meanwhile, India's border security force is on high alert across the country's over 4,000-kilometer-long border with Bangladesh. BSF field commanders have been asked to take on-ground positions, and the railways has stopped all trains to Bangladesh. The question many are asking is, what does Sheikh Hasina's ouster mean for India? Analysts believe Hasina's fall is a major setback and a source of concern for New Delhi. Hasina has been India's closest geopolitical partner in various arenas ranging from economics to counter-terrorism. India could trust her party, the Awami League, which was broadly considered pro-India. Also, India had invested a great deal in Sheikh Hasina over the years. The two countries are working on ambitious connectivity projects to link their economies. Contentious problems over territory and water sharing were also solved by India and Sheikh Hasina as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh when the latter decided to award the Teesta River Water Project to India instead of China. Throughout Hasina's political troubles, India has been seen as being pro-Sheikh Hasina. It pushed America to reduce pressure on her government over democracy and human rights concerns, for instance. In addition to losing its closest partner, India will also be worried about who comes to power next in Bangladesh. The country's other most powerful party is the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the BNP. India has had a troubled relationship with that party in the past. The BNP was seen as rather unhelpful to India's security as it refused to crack down on militant groups like the Alpha. The BNP has also relied on closer ties with Pakistan and China and has often been suspicious of New Delhi. It has also allied with Islamist groups in the past, which India was opposed to and concerned about. If the BNP comes to power, a lot of India's ambitious economic projects could take a big hit. Bangladesh under BNP could significantly lean towards China. India's backing of Hasina has also earned it some anger and unpopularity with the BNP. With the army currently in control in Bangladesh, India will closely watch the evolving situation. So what happens next, and how will all of this impact India, which is already surrounded by many hostile neighbors and is facing an increasingly aggressive and hegemonic China?